Their destination, the Dunlow homestead, was another 2 miles down a gravel road that rattled the car's suspension. Charming, Maya deadpanned as they pulled up. The house was a 2-story farmhouse, its white paint peeling like a sunburn. It was flanked by a rusted windmill and a barn that looked one strong breeze from collapse. But it was cheap, remote, and promised a week of uninterrupted writing time for Leo and painting for Maya. The key was under a fake rock, just as the listing said. The inside was musty but clean, furnished with the kind of heavy, dark wood furniture that seemed to absorb light. As they carried in their luggage, a pickup truck rumbled to a stop outside. A tall, wiry man in his 60s, wearing a John Deere cap, got out. His name was Earl, he said. Owned the land next door. Just checking in on the city folk, he said, his eyes crinkling, but not with warmth. It was an assessment. Settling in all right?
Yes, thanks. It's very peaceful, Leo said.
Quiet, Earl corrected, his gaze drifting past them to the vast fields of wheat that stretched to the horizon. Place gets quiet. You hear things in the quiet. Like what? Maya asked, intrigued. Earl spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. Oh, the wind, mostly. Sounds like whistling, sometimes. He looked back at them, his expression unreadable. You folks just mind your indoors by dark, and pay no mind to the whistling. It's just the wind in the wheat. He tipped his hat, got back in his truck, and left. Friendly guy, Leo muttered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violent purples and oranges, the temperature dropped. The silence Earl had mentioned descended, so profound it felt like a physical pressure. And then, as night finally claimed the plains, they heard it. A faint melodic whistling. It wasn't a tune they recognized. It was high, clear, and seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, carried on the wind that rustled the endless sea of wheat. See, the wind, Leo said, trying to sound convincing. Maya peered out the dark window into the impenetrable blackness. Yeah, the wind. Chapter 2. The days were deceptively peaceful. Leo wrote on the porch. Maya set up her easel and tried to capture the oppressive beauty of the landscape. But the nights belonged to the whistling. It became a constant, a soundtrack to their dreams. Sometimes it was distant, a mere suggestion on the breeze. Other nights it felt closer, right outside the window. On the third night, the dog started barking. It was a ragged, frantic sound from somewhere in the fields. It barked for hours, a desperate counterpoint to the eerie whistling. Then, around midnight, it stopped. Abruptly, the silence that followed was heavier than the noise. The next morning, Maya found something. While looking for a good vantage point to paint, she ventured to the edge of the wheat field. There, trampled in the dirt, was a small, hand-whittled flute. It was crude, made from a piece of river cane and dark with age. She brought it back to the house. Don't touch that, Leo said, a strange revulsion on his face. It's probably filthy. But Maya was fascinated. That evening, she absent-mindedly put it to her lips and blew. No sound came out. It was clogged with dirt. That night, the whistling changed. It was no longer melodic, but sharp, insistent. It circled the house. They heard footsteps on the gravel path, slow and dragging. Leo grabbed a kitchen knife and shone his phone's flashlight out the window. Nothing, but the whistling was now right on the other side of the door. A low, wet sound, like air being forced through a clogged pipe. Terrified, they backed away. The doorknob jiggled, then rattled violently. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The whistling retreated back into the fields. They didn't sleep. At first light, they drove into what passed for Dunlow's town center, a single general store that also served as a post office and diner. The bell above the door jingled, and conversation stopped. 3 old men at a counter swiveled to look at them. The woman behind the counter, name tag Bev, gave them a thin, wary smile. "We're staying at the old homestead," Leo began. The atmosphere in the room chilled. One of the old men muttered something into his coffee. "We've been hearing noises, whistling, at night," Maya added. Bev's smile vanished. She started wiping the counter with a rag, her movements stiff. "That's just the wind, honey. Plays tricks on you out here."
It didn't sound like tricks, Leo pressed. It sounded like someone was outside our door.
One of the old men slammed his mug down. "You leave it be, you hear? You don't go encouraging it." "Encouraging what?" Maya asked, her voice rising. The old man stood up, his eyes blazing. "The Whistler. It's old, older than this town. It lives in the wheat. It mimics, it calls, and if you answer, it comes to collect." Bev placed a hand on the man's arm, calming him. She looked at Leo and Maya with something like pity. "Just be inside by dark. Don't answer the whistles. And for God's sake, if you find anything out there, any of its things, you leave them be." Maya and Leo exchanged a horrified glance. She hadn't told anyone about the flute. Chapter 3. Panicked, they drove back to the house. Maya ran to her bag and pulled out the crude flute. "I'm getting rid of it." "No." Leo grabbed her wrist. "Didn't you hear them? Don't encourage it." What if throwing it away is an answer? They were trapped. They had the thing the entity was clearly looking for, and they were too scared to give it back or keep it. That afternoon, a storm rolled in. The sky turned a bruised green, and the wind picked up, whipping the wheat into a frenzy. The power flickered and died, plunging the house into a premature twilight. The whistling started again, but this time it was different. It was a shrieking, furious sound, tangled with the howling wind. Tap, 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 a sound at the window. Not the wind, something hard, like a pebble. Leo crept to the living room window and peered through a crack in the blinds. Standing at the edge of the wheat field, barely visible in the stormy gloom, was a figure. It was tall and impossibly thin, its limbs jointed all wrong. It had no face, just a smooth, pale expanse where features should be, and it was raising a long, stick-like arm, tossing another pebble at the house. It tilted its head, and from that blank face came the high, clear, predatory whistle. Maya screamed from the kitchen, "Leo, the back door!" He ran. The back door was shaking on its hinges, the cheap lock straining. Through the frosted glass, he could see a dark, shifting shape. The whistling was now coming from both sides of the house, a dissonant duet. "It's trying to get in," Maya yelled, pressing her body against the trembling door. "The flute," Leo shouted. "We have to give it back." He snatched the crude flute from the table. He ran to the front door, unlocking it and throwing it open. The wind and rain lashed at him. The figure was still there, at the edge of the field, now perfectly still, waiting. "Here, take it!" Leo screamed into the gale and threw the flute as far as he could, into the churning wheat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the figure moved. It didn't walk. It seemed to glide, dissolving into the stalks of wheat without a sound. The whistling stopped. The pounding on the back door ceased. The only sound was the raging storm. They slumped against the wall, soaked and trembling, believing it was over. Chapter 4. The storm passed. The power came back on. For 2 days there was no whistling, no signs. They packed their bags, ready to flee the moment they felt it was safe. On the third night, as they tried to sleep in the same bed for comfort, a new sound came, a soft scratching at the window. Then, a faint, familiar melody, the same one they had heard the first night. It was gentle, almost pleading. "Don't listen," Leo whispered, his hand gripping Maya's. But the whistling was hypnotic. It was a siren's call, promising an end to the fear, a return to the initial, deceptive peace. Then, a small voice joined the whistle. It was a perfect imitation of a child's voice, sweet and lost. "Hello, I'm lost, can you help me? Please let me in. It's cold." Maya's breath hitched.
It sounded so real, so helpless. "It's not real," Leo hissed, clamping his hands over his ears. The voice changed. It became Maya's mother's voice, who had passed away years ago. "Maya, honey? It's me. Open the door, baby. I'm so scared." Tears streamed down Maya's face. She started to get up. "Mom?" Leo grabbed her. "No, it's a trick." The voice shifted again. This time, it was Leo's own voice, but filled with pure terror. "Maya, help me. It's got me. It's pulling me into the wheat." The mimicry was flawless. Leo felt a cold dread seize his heart. Hearing his own voice screaming in terror from the darkness was a psychological violation he wasn't prepared for. Maya, spurred by the imitation of Leo's cries, broke free. "Leo!" She ran to the front door and fumbled with the lock. "Maya, don't!" he roared, scrambling after her. It was too late. She threw the door open. There was nothing there. Just the quiet, star-dusted night and the silent, watchful wheat. A wave of relief washed over them. It had been a final, cruel trick. They stood in the doorway, holding each other, shaking with adrenaline and spent fear. And then, from directly above them, from the roof of the porch, came a low, wet, gurgling whistle. They looked up. The thin, faceless figure was crouched on the porch roof, its head bent at an impossible angle to look down at them. Its blank face was inches from theirs. It raised one long, twig-like finger and made a come-hither motion. Before they could move, before they could scream, it dropped on them. It wasn't heavy, but it was strong, and it smelled of damp earth and rotting grain. It didn't attack them. It wrapped its limbs around them both, a cage of cold, hard flesh, and then it dragged them not towards the field, but up. It scrambled back onto the roof with impossible strength, pulling their struggling, screaming forms with it. From the roof it leaped, carrying them out into the ocean of wheat. The official report listed them as missing persons, presumed to have gotten lost in the fields. It happens sometimes in Kansas. The space plays tricks on the mind. The homestead was relisted on the vacation rental site. New people will come, drawn by the low price and the quiet. And at night, if you listen closely on the wind, you might hear it. Not one whistle, but three. The original, high and clear, now joined by two others. They don't sound fearful anymore. They sound integrated, a permanent, harmonious part of the chorus that lives in the wheat, waiting to welcome new members, to mimic new voices, and to answer any foolish enough to whistle back. The Whistling in the Wheat, Chapter 1. The dust of Highway 83 was a fine, red powder that coated the rental car's windshield, turning the setting Kansas sun into a bloody smear. For Leo and Maya, city-bred and perpetually connected, the silence was the first shock. The second was the sheer, unending flatness. "Are you sure this is the right turn?" Maya asked, zooming on her phone's map. The signal had been flickering in and out for the last hour. "According to the guy at the last gas station, Dunlow's just a spit down the road," Leo said, mimicking the attendant's drawl. "He said we can't miss it." They missed it twice. Dunlow wasn't so much a town as a collection of dying structures clinging to the earth. A shuttered post office, a grain elevator that leaned like a tired old man, and a handful of houses set so far apart they seemed to be actively avoiding each other.